Lydia Marshall stood in the middle of her modest kitchen, staring at the clock on the wall as its second hand ticked away. The evening sun cast a warm, amber glow through the blinds, painting long shadows across the countertop. Today was her 12th wedding anniversary with Marcus, a milestone that should have been filled with joy and celebration. Yet, as the minutes dragged on and the sun began to dip below the horizon, a knot of anxiety twisted tighter in her stomach. Marcus was late. Again. Lydia leaned against the sink, her eyes fixed on the driveway, half expecting to see his car pull up any second now. The dinner she had painstakingly prepared sat untouched on the table, the candles she had lit now dripping wax onto the white tablecloth. The air was thick with the scent of rosemary and garlic, a meal Marcus used to love back when he still noticed the little things she did for him. She ran a hand through her hair, releasing a heavy sigh. The past year had been rough. Marcus had lost his job, and with it, a piece of his identity. He was always a man who took pride in being the provider, the steady rock in their marriage. But after the layoff, he became withdrawn, spending more time out of the house, claiming to be networking or job hunting, but often returning home hours later with vague excuses and an unspoken tension hanging between them. Lydia tried to be supportive, tried to comfort him, but each attempt was met with a cold, distant stare that made her feel invisible. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, she hoped, he would come home on time, notice the effort she had put into making their anniversary special, and maybe, just maybe, they could start to rebuild the connection that had frayed between them. She straightened up, smoothing the wrinkles out of her black dress, the one she wore on their first date. A small, hopeful smile tugged at the corners of her mouth as she reached for the wine bottle, pouring herself a glass to steady her nerves. Half an hour later, she finally heard the sound of tires crunching over gravel. Lydia's heart skipped a beat. The clasp was slightly worn, and one of the stones had a faint scratch, as though it had been worn many times before. "It's lovely," she said, her voice wavering. "Where did you get it?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably, shoving his hands into his pockets. "A little shop downtown. Saw in the window and thought you'd like it." Lydia nodded, forcing a smile. She set the glass down, wiped her damp palms against her dress, and hurried to the front door. When she opened it, Marcus was there, standing under the porch light, his shoulders hunched and his eyes dark with exhaustion. "Hey," he muttered, stepping inside without so much as a kiss or a smile. The stale scent of cigarettes clung to his clothes, a habit he had supposedly quit months ago. "Happy anniversary," Lydia said, forcing her voice to sound cheerful, despite the growing lump in her throat. "Yeah, happy anniversary," Marcus replied, glancing around the living room as though he were seeing it for the first time. His gaze finally settled on the dining table, with the untouched dinner and melting candles. "You didn't have to go through all this trouble," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "It wasn't trouble," Lydia said, her smile faltering. "I wanted to. It's our anniversary." Marcus nodded, looking anywhere but at her. "Yeah, well, thanks. I got you something." Lydia's breath caught in her throat. Despite everything, a small surge of hope rose within her. Maybe he was trying. Maybe tonight would be the turning point. Marcus reached in his coat pocket and pulled out a small, unremarkable jewelry box. The velvet was scuffed, and the edges were fraying. He handed it to her with a stiff, almost mechanical motion. Lydia took the box, her fingers trembling slightly. She glanced up at him, but his eyes were fixed on the floor. Opening the box, she found a gold bracelet nestled inside. The delicate chain was adorned with tiny gemstones that sparkled under the light. It was beautiful, undeniably so. Yet, as Lydia lifted it out of the box, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off. "Thank you, Marcus. It's beautiful." "Yeah, well," he said, his eyes darting toward the hallway. "I'm going to take a shower. Long day." Without waiting for a response, he brushed past her and disappeared down the hallway, leaving Lydia standing alone with a bracelet dangling from her fingers. She closed the jewelry box, the lid snapping shut with a hollow click. The house felt eerily silent, the only sound the faint hiss of the shower running in the background. Lydia sank into a chair at the dining table, staring at the bracelet as it caught the light, each gemstone glinting like a tiny, unspoken secret. Her mind wandered back to the early years of their marriage, the nights they stayed up talking until dawn, the surprise flowers he used to bring her just because, the way he would look at her like she was the only person in the room. Those days felt like a lifetime ago. Now, they were little more than a distant memory, fading like the candle flames that sputtered and died before her eyes. Lydia slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, the cool metal pressing against her skin. It was beautiful, yes, but it felt foreign, as though it didn't quite belong to her. As she traced her finger over the stones, a cold shiver ran down her spine. That feeling of familiarity, the nagging sensation that she had seen this bracelet before, lingered in the back of her mind, but she couldn't quite place it. She shook her head, telling herself she was being paranoid. Marcus had given her a gift. He was trying. That was what mattered. She needed to stop overthinking, stop looking for problems where there were none. And yet, as the night dragged on and the house fell into a restless silence, Lydia couldn't shake the feeling that the bracelet on her wrist was more than just a simple gift. It was a reminder of how much had changed between them and how little she truly knew about the man she had been married to for over a decade. And as she lay awake in bed that night, her husband's back turned to her as he slept. Lydia's mind replayed the way Marcus had avoided her eyes when he handed her the box, the way his voice had wavered when he told her he had seen it in the window. There was something he wasn't telling her, something buried beneath his tired eyes and forced smiles. And as Lydia stared at the ceiling, her hand absently touching the bracelet, she couldn't help but wonder if that something was a secret that would soon unravel, bringing with it truths she wasn't prepared to face. The weeks following the anniversary felt like a blur to Lydia. The bracelet, once a symbol of Marcus' supposed attempt to mend their fractured connection, had become a silent weight on her wrist, a constant reminder of the disquiet that gnawed at her. Each time she caught a glimpse of the gold chain sparkling under the kitchen light or felt its cool metal pressing against her skin as she folded laundry, that eerie sense of familiarity tugged at her again. But she pushed it aside, convincing herself she was being paranoid, that she was searching for problems where none existed. Life continued as it always did, routine, predictable, numb. Marcus remained as distant as ever, leaving early in the mornings with a brief, absent-minded peck on her cheek and returning home late, reeking of cigarettes and cheap cologne. Lydia wanted to believe he was job hunting, that he was genuinely trying to put his life back together, but the sinking feeling in her gut told her otherwise. She hated herself for the suspicion that simmered beneath her skin, hated herself for wanting to check his phone when he wasn't looking, for wanting to follow him just to see where he really went every day. A month after their anniversary, Lydia received an invitation to a charity event hosted by her former college friend, Megan. Megan was one of those women who seemed to glide effortlessly through life. Effortlessly beautiful, effortlessly wealthy, effortlessly connected. Lydia hadn't seen her in years, but Megan's invitation had been insistent, even including a note at the bottom. "It's been too long. You need to get out of that house, girl." Reluctantly, Lydia decided to go. She hadn't been out in weeks, and the thought of dressing up and pretending, even for a night, that everything was fine almost felt like a form of therapy. She slipped into a sleek black dress and fastened the bracelet around her wrist, its weight oddly comforting as she scrutinized her reflection in the mirror. Megan's event was hosted at one of the city's poshest hotels, a sprawling venue with glittering chandeliers and champagne flowing like water. Lydia felt out of place the moment she stepped inside, surrounded by women in designer gowns and men with perfectly pressed suits. She kept a tight grip on her clutch, her eyes scanning the room for Megan's familiar face. It didn't take long to find her. Megan was holding court near the bar, surrounded by a group of women hanging on her every word. Lydia made her way over, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "Lydia, oh my God, look at you." Megan squealed, pulling her into a tight, perfumed hug. "You look amazing." Lydia forced a smile, feeling self-conscious under Megan's scrutinizing gaze. "Thanks. You too." As Megan introduced her to a few of her friends, Lydia tried to relax, sipping her champagne and making small talk about the latest fundraising efforts and neighborhood gossip. It was during one of these conversations, while she was laughing politely at a story about Megan's disastrous attempt to play golf, that she felt it. A pair of eyes watching her. Lydia turned, her gaze colliding with that of a woman standing by the bar. The woman was striking, with dark, shoulder-length hair and almond-shaped eyes lined with heavy mascara. She was staring directly at Lydia, her eyes fixed on her wrist, her brows furrowed, as though she were trying to solve a complicated puzzle. Lydia felt a chill run down her spine. "Excuse me," the woman said, stepping forward. "That bracelet, where did you get it?" Lydia's fingers instinctively curled around the bracelet, the cool metal digging into her skin. "My husband gave it to me," she said, her voice coming out more defensive than she intended. The woman's lips twitched into a tight, humorless smile. "Oh, I see," she said, her gaze dropping to the bracelet again. It looks very familiar." Lydia forced a laugh, tried to defuse the tension. "Well, I guess it's a popular design." The woman's eyes flicked up to meet Lydia's. "Yes, very popular." Before Lydia could respond, Megan's voice cut through the awkward silence. "Oh, Lydia, have you met Cynthia? She's new in the neighborhood. Just moved in last year." Cynthia. The name hit Lydia like a slap to the face. She had heard Marcus mention the name Cynthia once before, during a conversation he had with a friend on the phone. At the time, Lydia hadn't thought much of it, assuming Cynthia was just some random acquaintance. But now, standing face to face with the woman whose eyes seemed to bore through her, Lydia's heart raced. "Nice to meet you," Lydia said, extending her hand. Cynthia took it, her grip firm and cold. "Likewise," she said, her gaze never leaving Lydia's wrist. "You have a very beautiful bracelet." Lydia swallowed, feeling the air grow heavy between them. "Thank you. It was a gift." "Oh, how sweet," Cynthia said, her voice dripping with something that felt like venom. "You know, I once had a bracelet just like that. My ex gave it to me. It was a bit too flashy for my taste, though, so I got rid of it." Lydia's breath caught in her throat. The room felt suddenly too warm, the noise too loud, the champagne too sweet. "Really?" she said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "What a coincidence." "Yes," Cynthia said, her eyes narrowing. "A very interesting coincidence." Before Lydia could respond, Cynthia flashed her a tight, insincere smile and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of mingling guests. Lydia stood there, her pulse pounding in her ears, her hand trembling as it hovered over the bracelet. Megan touched her arm. "Are you okay? You look like you just saw a ghost." "I'm fine," Lydia said, forcing a smile that felt brittle. I need some air." Lydia pushed through the crowd, the room spinning around her as she made her way to the exit. Once outside, she leaned against the cool brick wall, sucking in deep breaths of the chilly night air. Cynthia's words echoed in her mind, each syllable a hammer blow to her composure. "I once had a bracelet just like that. My ex gave it to me. I got rid of it." The implications twisted through Lydia's mind like a knife. Was it possible? Was the bracelet Marcus had given her not just any bracelet, but one that once belonged to Cynthia? And if so, why would Marcus have it? Why would he gift it to her, knowing she might eventually run into Cynthia and discover the truth? Lydia stared down at the bracelet, her skin crawling beneath the gold chain. It suddenly felt heavy, too heavy, like a shackle, binding her to a reality she wasn't ready to face. She yanked it off her wrist and stuffed it into her clutch, her heart pounding as she tried to steady herself. But the questions wouldn't stop. They chased her all the way home, echoing in her mind as she lay awake in bed that night, Marcus snoring softly beside her, oblivious to the storm brewing inside her. And as Lydia lay there in the dark, staring up at the ceiling, she knew one thing for certain. The bracelet was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a link to a secret that had just started to unravel. Lydia's mind was a chaotic swirl of doubt, anger, and sadness. She couldn't escape the memory of Cynthia's piercing gaze and that loaded statement. "I once had a bracelet just like that. My ex gave it to me." The words replayed over and over, refusing to fade. It was impossible to ignore the implications any longer. Lydia needed answers, and she needed them now. The next morning, Marcus was already gone when Lydia woke up, his side of the bed cold and untouched. A pang of sadness hit her as she stared at the rumpled sheets. This had become their routine, him vanishing early, avoiding her gaze, while she lay awake, tangled in uncertainty. Lydia pulled herself out of bed, a renewed sense of purpose coursing through her. She needed to find out the truth, and the bracelet was the key. She retrieved the jewelry box from her bedside drawer, examining the bracelet once more. Now that she knew it might have belonged to Cynthia, every detail seemed more pronounced. The tiny scratch on one of the stones, the slightly worn clasp. She turned it over and noticed a faint engraving near the clasp. To see Love M. Her stomach dropped, a wave of nausea washing over her. There was no denying it now. This bracelet wasn't just similar. It was Cynthia's bracelet. Marcus had given it to her. Lydia's hands shook as she placed the bracelet back in the box. A million thoughts collided in her mind, each more terrifying than the last. Was Marcus having an affair with Cynthia? Was that why he'd been so distant, coming home late, reeking of smoke and guilt? Her chest tightened with the force of her emotions, but she forced herself to think rationally. She needed proof before confronting him. Sitting at the kitchen table, Lydia pulled out her laptop and opened Marcus's email. She hesitated for a moment, guilt tugging at her conscience. But her need to know the truth outweighed any sense of privacy. She typed bracelet in the search bar, but nothing relevant came up. Next, she tried pawn shop and hit enter. To her surprise, an email popped up from a few months back, a receipt from a local pawn shop. Lydia clicked on it, her pulse racing. The email confirmed a purchase of a gold bracelet with gemstones. The date matched the week before their anniversary, and the seller was listed as Cynthia Walters. Lydia's breath caught in her throat. He had bought Cynthia's bracelet, the bracelet she had given him during their affair, and gifted it to her for their anniversary. The betrayal hit her like a punch to the gut. Tears blurred her vision as she scrolled through more emails, her hands moving on autopilot. There were more messages between Marcus and Cynthia, some from months ago, others more recent. One in particular made Lydia's blood run cold. I miss you. When can we meet again? It was dated just last week. Lydia couldn't breathe. Her hands were clammy, and her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She closed the laptop and stared blankly at the wall, trying to make sense of it all. Marcus had been seeing Cynthia, despite claiming he was out looking for jobs or meeting with old colleagues. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was ongoing. She couldn't sit there any longer. Lydia grabbed her coat and keys, not entirely sure where she was going, but knowing she couldn't stay in that house. She drove aimlessly through town, her thoughts spinning out of control. Eventually, she found herself parked outside a small coffee shop where she used to meet her sister, Anna, for their weekly catch-ups. Lydia hadn't seen much of Anna lately, not since things with Marcus had started falling apart. She pulled out her phone and dialed her sister's number. Lydia? Hey, what's up? Anna's cheerful voice was a stark contrast to Lydia's turmoil. Can you meet me at Brood Awakening? Lydia's voice cracked. Of course. Are you okay? No, Lydia whispered, wiping a tear from her cheek. I'll explain when you get here. 15 minutes later, Anna slid into the booth across from Lydia, immediately noticing her sister's red, puffy eyes and trembling hands. Lydia, what's going on? Lydia took a deep breath, recounting everything. The anniversary, the bracelet, the encounter with Cynthia, and the emails. Anna listened in stunned silence, her expression shifting from confusion to anger to heartbreak. I can't believe he would do this to you, Anna said, squeezing Lydia's hand. That bastard. I always thought there was something off about him lately. I feel so stupid, Lydia whispered, staring down at the table. He gave me his mistress's bracelet for our anniversary. Who does that? A narcissistic asshole. That's who. Anna snapped. You don't deserve this. You've been nothing but supportive through his job loss and everything. You don't owe him anything, Lydia. But what do I do now? Lydia asked, her voice trembling. Do I confront him? Do I leave? You deserve the truth. Confront him. Make him admit it. Then you decide. But don't let him manipulate you into thinking it's your fault. Lydia nodded, wiping her face with a napkin. I just need to hear it from him. I need to know why he thought he could do this to me. When Lydia returned home, Marcus's car was in the driveway. She braced herself, her stomach a twisted knot of anxiety. Inside, she found him sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up, his expression surprised. "Hey, where have you been?" he asked casually, as if nothing was wrong. Lydia didn't answer. She walked over, set the jewelry box on the coffee table, and sat down opposite him. "We need to talk." Marcus glanced at the box, confusion crossing his face. "What's this?" "You know what it is," Lydia replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I know about the bracelet. I know it belonged to Cynthia." Marcus's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Stop lying," Lydia snapped, anger finally breaking through. "I know you bought it from a pawn shop after she sold it. I found a receipt. I know you've been seeing her. I read the emails. Marcus, I know everything." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Lydia could see the gears turning in his mind, trying to come up with an excuse, but nothing came. Finally, he dropped his head into his hands, a long, ragged sigh escaping his lips. "I didn't think you'd find out," he mumbled. Lydia's heart broke all over again. "Why, Marcus? Why would you do this to me?" He looked up, guilt etched into every line of his face. "I was lonely. You were always busy, always stressed about money. I felt like a failure, and she made me feel wanted." Lydia shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "So you gave me your bracelet? On our anniversary? Do you have any idea how humiliating that is?" "I wasn't thinking," he admitted, his voice small. "I just wanted to give you something nice, something I thought you'd like." Lydia couldn't believe her ears. "Nice? You thought giving me a bracelet from your mistress was nice? Are you even listening to yourself?" "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered, but the apology felt hollow, devoid of real remorse. Lydia stood up, feeling stronger than she had in weeks. "I can't do this anymore. You broke us, Marcus. You destroyed the trust one had in you. I need you to leave." His eyes widened. "Lydia, please. Let's talk about this. There's nothing left to talk about. Just go." As Marcus packed a bag and left the house, Lydia sank back onto the couch, her heart aching but her resolve unbroken. She knew this was just the beginning of the end, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of control. She would rebuild her life, piece by piece, without him. The days after Marcus left were a haze of numbness for Lydia. The house felt cavernous and empty, echoing with the silence that now filled every room. The bracelet still lay in the jewelry box on the coffee table, a silent testament to the lies that had shattered her world. Lydia couldn't bring herself to touch it, let alone look at it. Every time she passed by, she felt its weight, as though it were a living, breathing thing, a symbol of betrayal that refused to let go. Marcus had called twice, left a few voicemails pleading to talk, to explain, to work things out. Lydia listened to each one with a stony expression, her jaw clenched tight as his voice crackled through the speaker. "Lydia, please. I made a mistake. Just let me come over and talk." But each time, she deleted the message, her resolve hardening. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. One morning, as Lydia sat at the kitchen table with a half-empty cup of coffee in front of her, Anna dropped by unannounced. Lydia opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. Anna took one look at her sister and pulled her into a tight embrace. "I brought donuts," Anna said, holding up the white bakery box. "And a lot of wine." Lydia tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "Thanks." They settled at the kitchen table, Anna pouring wine into coffee mugs while Lydia picked at a chocolate-glazed donut without much interest. Anna took a sip and set her mug down, her eyes fixed on her sister. "How are you holding up?" Anna asked gently. "I don't know," Lydia said, her voice hollow. "I feel like my whole life has been a lie. Like I don't even know who I am without him." "You're still Lydia," Anna said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "You're still the woman who got through college on her own, who kept this house running while Marcus couldn't keep a job, who took care of everything while he was out there playing house with Cynthia." Lydia's throat tightened. "I just keep replaying it in my head. Every time he said he was going to the gym, every time he said he was out with the guys. I keep wondering, was he with her?" Anna nodded, her jaw tense. Probably. But you can't keep doing that to yourself. You can't let him live rent-free in your head like this. Lydia swallowed hard, tears brimming in her eyes. I feel so stupid. How did I not see it? How did I not know? Because you trusted him, Anna said, her eyes blazing with anger. And that's not a crime. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. You're supposed to trust your partner. He's the one who broke that trust, not you. Lydia sniffed, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I hate that he still has that power over me, that he can still make me feel like this. Anna leaned forward, her expression fierce. Then take it back. Take back your power, Lydia. Do something that's for you. Something that reminds you of who you are without him. Lydia swallowed, glancing over at the jewelry box on a coffee table. The bracelet seemed to taunt her from across the room, its gold chain catching the light, sparkling with an eerie brilliance. Maybe I should get rid of it, Lydia said, her voice quivering. The bracelet. I can't stand looking at it anymore. Anna followed her gaze, her expression hardening. Yes, get rid of it. Sell it, donate it, melt it down, whatever you need to do. It's just a piece of metal. It doesn't define you. Later that afternoon, after Anna had left, Lydia sat alone in the living room, the box clutched in her hands. The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating her with memories of Marcus and the life they had built together, a life that had crumbled beneath the weight of his lies. Lydia opened the box, the bracelet glinting up at her like a serpent ready to strike. She took a deep breath and picked it up, the cool metal sliding through her fingers. Suddenly, an idea struck her. She grabbed her phone and pulled up Cynthia's number, her heart hammering in her chest. It was a risk, but Lydia felt like she was drowning in her own mind, and she needed to do something, anything, to reclaim her sanity. She dialed the number before she could talk herself out of it. Cynthia answered on the second ring. Hello. Cynthia, it's Lydia, she said, her voice tight. A long pause. Oh, hi. Can we talk? Another pause, this one heavier. About what? The bracelet, Lydia said, her fingers tightening around it. I think it belongs to you. Half an hour later, Lydia and Cynthia sat across from each other in a quiet park, the wind rustling through the trees, carrying the scent of wet leaves and freshly cut grass. Cynthia's eyes were bloodshot, her makeup smeared as though she had been crying. Lydia handed her the bracelet, and Cynthia stared at it, her lips trembling. I thought I'd never see it again, Cynthia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Marcus gave it to me last year. He said he got it just for me. Lydia swallowed the bile, rising in her throat. Did you know he gave it to me for our anniversary? Cynthia's eyes widened, shock and guilt mingling in her expression. No, I didn't know. How long? Lydia asked, her voice breaking. How long were you with him? Cynthia looked down, shame flushing her cheeks. About 8 months. I didn't know he was married at first. He said he was separated, that you were just his roommate. I was stupid. I believed him. Lydia's jaw clenched. And when you found out, Cynthia's shoulders slumped. I ended it. I couldn't keep living with that kind of lie. I sold the bracelet to get rid of him, to get rid of everything he ever gave me. I didn't know he bought it back. Lydia nodded, tears stinging her eyes. I didn't know either. They sat in silence, the wind blowing between them like a cold, invisible wall. After a moment, Cynthia reached across the bench, her hand hovering over Lydia's. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I know that doesn't make up for anything, but I really am sorry. Lydia took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of release as the words washed over her. I don't know what to do now, she admitted. I don't know how to move on from this. Cynthia nodded, her eyes softening. You do it one day at a time. You remind yourself that you're worth more than a man who would do something like this to you. And you don't look back. Lydia closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. When she opened them, she placed the bracelet back in Cynthia's hand. Take it. It was never mine to begin with. Cynthia shook her head, pushing it back toward Lydia. No. Sell it. Donate it. Burn it. Just don't keep it. It's nothing but poison. Lydia nodded, clutching the bracelet in her fist, the metal biting into her skin. And as she watched Cynthia walk away, disappearing down the park path, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders, as though the wind had carried away a part of her grief. That night, Lydia drove to the pawn shop where Marcus had bought the bracelet, the very same place Cynthia had sold it months ago. The clerk looked up as she placed it on the counter, his eyes flicking from the bracelet to Lydia's weary face. "Are you selling?" he asked. "Yes," Lydia said, her voice firm. "I'm selling." And as she walked out of the shop, the doorbell chiming behind her, Lydia felt a sense of closure, a small but significant step toward reclaiming her life in the wreckage Marcus had left behind. She was no longer the woman waiting for her husband to come home. She was the woman walking away, her head held high, her heart still bruised but beating stronger with every step.